Hey guys, it's June 4th, 2021. I'm Kimberly Jolly from Fat Quarter Shop and I am on vacation. So we have recorded this as a premiere, but you can definitely ask questions in the comment box and we will get you answers. We are on block 24 of Sewcialites. It's designed by Carrie Nelson and it is called Passion. So I'm going to show you the block. And I'm going to show you how to make it so that you can make this block this weekend. It's a completely free pattern. It comes with 3-inch instructions, 6-inch instructions, and 9-inch instructions. I'm going to be making the 3-inch size, so I covered up the other two so I don't get confused. And I will show you the blocks all sewn up in the Homestead collection. This is the 9-inch block, 6-inch, and 3-inch. And if you look at the block, it's basically made up of a 9 patch, and then you add 2 sides, trim, and 2 sides. And I'm going to show you how to make this block where you can actually trim it down to the exact size you need. So you can see that over here it's completely straight. If you follow the instructions, it's going to come out the exact size. I'm going to cut this fabric and this fabric just a tiny bit bigger so that we can trim it down. So I'm going to use Aurifil Color 2000. I love this fabric. I love this red fabric. And I'm going to just cut with some fabric. This is what I'm using today. It's just some scraps from Figs and Shirtings. I'm using just leftover layer cakes. So I'm going to cut everything and then show you how to piece it. So for A, fabric A is going to go right here. And the reason I'm going to cut this bigger is you cut it on the diagonal twice. So it says to cut 2 2¾ inch squares. I'm going to cut 2 3-inch squares just because it's easy. Now, if this is a directional fabric, you could pay attention to it. I have intentionally used a non-directional fabric, but if you do have a directional fabric, you might want to pay attention to the direction. So I'm going to just cut 2 3-inch squares first. And if you cut it the size we have listed, you will have enough to trim. I just like to do a little bit more. And we're on block 34 and we only have 2 weeks left of this free sew along. So you can join us for the next 2 weeks. And then on the 37th week, we're going to talk about finishing and some different finishing options. So for our fabric A's, we're going to cut these on the diagonal twice. And that's going to give us 8 triangles. And I'm going to stack them because I made them slightly bigger so they don't have to be 100% exact. And I'm going to put those on my design board as my fabric A's. And then fabric B, I need 4 1 by 1¼ inch rectangles. Let's see where those go. Those go in the center, so I'm going to cut those exact. I'm actually going to cut it from this. So I'm going to cut a 2½, and then 1¼ so that's 2 1¼ because 1¼ plus 1¼ is 2½, and then I need 4 1-inch pieces from this, so I will get that from And with this sew along, we are doing everything pressed open, but you can press however you like. If you are doing a really small block, like the 3-inch size, I would always recommend pressing open because there's a lot of seams. There's more bulk in the seams the smaller your block is. So these are B's, and then I'll just get rid of these. And that's our background, and we have listed it as our background. And when you're following this, you can always follow this diagram. And I do suggest anytime you're working with any kind of pattern, just read through it before you cut. So for our C's, this is going to be this piece. I'm going to make it a little bit longer. So I'm going to make it 4 pieces, 1 by 2.5. And that would be this print. So I'm going to just do a 1-inch piece. Actually, I'm going to do a 2.5-inch piece. And when I'm done with these 3-inch blocks, I'm going to make some pin cushions. So these need to be subcut into 4 1-inch strips, rectangles. So I usually cut the larger size and then go down. So I've got 4. And this block doesn't use any kind of paper, so you don't need any triangles on a roll or It's So Emma paper or anything like that. This is just a plain block. I'm just gonna do it a little bit different. And then D, I need 4 1¼ inch squares. So what I like to do with that is 1¼ plus 1¼ is 2.5. So this is already 2.5. And I'm gonna use this ruler to cut it into 4. So I'll put it on the point just so that it's easier for me to cut. So this ruler has a line for the 1¼ and it has a line on the 1¼ this way. And there we go. So those are my D's. And my E, I need 1 1-inch square. And if you want to see any of these blocks demoed in larger sizes, we did that at the beginning of the program. And so I have demoed throughout this, all 3 sizes, so that if you are someone who likes things big, you can look at the first ones, and if you like small, you can do kind of the smaller. So with this block, I'm going to go ahead and use this design board. This is a Lori Holt design board that has batting on the front. We sell them at Fat Quarter Shop, and you can also make them, and we have a video from Lori on how to make them on our channel. So from here, I'm going to lay out my block. It's pretty simple. So my D's are here. My E is here. I'm going to lay everything out. It makes it easy. And then my B's go here. So this is where we're going to start. That's the center of our block. I'll lay these out in a little bit. So I have put a 1/4 inch foot. I'm going to sew down here, stop, and then we're going to add this, and then we'll start pressing. And with these two, we'll put them right sides together, and you can either pin or not pin. I am going to pin, I think, just to be accurate. And I just have a 1/4 inch foot with a guide on it, and I'm just going to sew down here. Oops. And I did notice when I started, I kind of started a little bit in, so I'm going to kind of redo that stitch just to make sure I got all the way. I'm using like a 2.0 stitch length. It's actually like a 1.75. And just keep sewing. I like to leave a little chain between. And here you can pin or glue or not pin. And my sewing machine just came unthreaded, so I'm going to re-thread it. Real quick. And if you are pressing open, it's always good to do your stitch length just a little bit longer than you normally would. So whatever your normal is, just go down 1 or 2 notches. So I'm going to start again right here. And then look at this mess. It's a big old mess. I have a lot of thread right here. It's a mess. So I'm going to cut all this off. I don't want all this bulk in here. I'm just going to get rid of all this excessive threads because that's just a lot of mess right there that I don't need in my quilt. And then you can just kind of finger press these open. You can also use the Lori Holt seam roller to get it nice and flat, and then we're going to add this next row. And of course, you can ask me any questions in the comments, and we will get you all the answers that you need. And next week, I will be back live on Friday at the normal time, normal place. It's nice to have a little vacation. So I'm just sewing these together with a little chain. And then from here we're going to press. And like I said, we're going to be pressing open, and this is how it will look. And right here I actually have a little piece that needs to be chopped off that I see. Those need to come off. And I'll show you that on my block. So from here, I am going to just press everything to one side, nice and flat, and then I'll press them open. And I do use steam. I have starched all of my fabric. We have some videos on starching that we can link below, just if you're interested in how I starch. And that looks a little crooked. Let's see. I'm gonna iron it and see if it looks better. It looks a little crooked. And when I'm ironing, I do try to just keep my iron nice and flat instead of rocking it back and forth. If you rock your iron, you will distort your stitches or your seams just a little bit. So I try to just be slow and steady. And so I try to do about 5 seconds. And I can tell, look at that. I can tell that my seam is off. So I sewed that crooked. See that? You can see it. So it must, see how, okay, so I can see that my seam is not right, because right there I went to 3/8. So I'm gonna unstitch that and fix it. And I can just see it with the naked eye, but it's probably where the machine came unstitched. So when I do a short stitch length, it's very hard to get these stitches, the thread out, because I go a little bit too far in. And when I get my stitches out, I do try to get all the thread out so that there's not just loose stuff sitting in there. So, okay, so I'm going to go back to my machine and stitch accurately. So don't ever be afraid to, if you see something that doesn't look great, just redo it. And you can see the stitches where they were, how I had veered off right there. But don't be afraid to just stop, take your time. Some days my stuff comes out super accurate, some days it doesn't. If I'm ever like just totally inaccurate, I'll just stop for the day and just say, oh, I better come back to that later. So I'm going to put them right sides together and pin. And when I do that, I do want to cut my chain apart, because if I press that open, that will make the stitch will pull my seam where it won't go all the way open. So I like to pin at the beginning and the end and every intersection. So here, I just really try to get the brownish gray to touch the brownish gray and the white to touch the white, and pin. I like to use thin, skinny pins. I feel like it doesn't distort the fabric as much. Some people don't pin as much as I do, but I like to pin. And then I will sew. And when I'm sewing, I'm gonna just sew with this 1/4 inch foot and try not to sew over my pins. And they match, so that's nice. Do the same thing over here. Cut that apart and just use lots of pins. And some people like to pin sideways like that. Some people like to pin up and down. I say pin whichever way that you get the most accurate results. So I like to pin up and down, but not everybody does. You can comment below and tell me how you like to pin, because that's always fun to see. And comment and let me know what day of the weekend you are sewing this block, so I will know. And you can also comment and tell me if you've started cheating and sewing it together all the way. Yay! So it looks nice. And you can see where those stitches were. You can still see it, but it will come out when you quilt it. So we're halfway done. This block is labeled as experienced, and the reason it's labeled as experienced is the outside is all bias. And the way I teach you this, I think it's more beginner. So I'm just gonna set my seam, press to one side, and then press open. And I would love to also know, do you like to press open? Do you like to press to one side? People have very strong feelings on which one they prefer. And I kind of changed my mind over time. I used to never, ever, ever press open. It was like the big no-no. And now I do it part of the time. So it's kind of, if I have a lot of time and if it's like something I'm going to treasure forever, I'm not giving it as a gift, I'm going to keep the quilt, I want my points to match, I'm going to press open. So that is nice and hot, and I'm going to put this clapper on it. Now see how that is wavy? See how the block, it waves. I'll put that clapper on there. When we come back, it's not going to wave anymore. It's going to be nice and flat. And the clappers are made from several different companies. Riley Blake has one, and Gypsy Quilter has one, and they are made of a wood that will absorb the heat and make it go flat. Oops, and I just took it off, so that didn't achieve anything. So now we're going to go to this step, and you will see once we get a little bit further why I've cut these pieces bigger. We did write the pattern where they're bigger. I just like to have them just a little bit bigger. So let's see. So we're going to lay it like this. So this is going to go on the outside of the block. So what I like to do is I'm going to put this right side together, pin at the bottom. I want this to be flush with the bottom and the side. The top part is going to get chopped off. I will put just one little pin up here, but nothing has to match at the top. So when you look at the other side, it doesn't have to match. I'm going to just pin all of these so that I can be a little bit more accurate when I'm sewing. And of course, let me know if you have any questions in the comment box so we can answer your questions. We're excited about Sewcialites too. We're going to start planning that now. We're probably going to keep all the blocks the same size, so we'll go with 3, 6, and 9 again, probably. And let's see, get all this pinned, and then I'm going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam. And the best thing about this one is you don't need any paper. I'm going to turn all of these 3-inch blocks that I've done into pin cushions, and I'm going to follow the instructions in the Scrapbook of Quilts book by Carrie Nelson and Joanna Figueroa on how to make my pin cushions. And I just chain piece these all together. And I'm using Arthur Color 2000 thread. Oops, and my machine just unstitched again. Okay, so when this happens, this just happened twice. What you do is you cut this thread and rethread the whole thing. Pull all your thread out. Something is just off, so I'm just going to restart from the very beginning. Rethread the whole thing, because if it starts doing that, something is just kinked somewhere. And hopefully it won't do it anymore. And I have had received a lot of questions on this needle threader and how to do it in the Juki, and I am not good at it, but there is a video somewhere on YouTube that tells you how. I just usually thread it myself, and I'm going to keep going. So from here, I will use this seam roller and just press to one side. Of course, I'm going to press it open later, but this will make it where I can sew the other side and then come back and iron, so that I'm saving time. I'm not getting up, walking to my ironing table, you know, when I'm at home. Anything to save a little bit of time, because the more time you save, the more quilts you can make. So again, same thing. The bottom should be flush. So this should be straight, and this should be straight all the way down. And pin. And again, at the top, you don't need to worry about any of that. And this would be a really pretty quilt if you just made it all in like all red and white, or all blue and white, black and white. It would make a really powerful quilt. And the block, it's not too hard, and I like that you can trim it down, because I always like anything that I can trim down because it looks nice. So we're almost done. Okay, and right here, I see this big old thing. This is from when I unthreaded it, so I'm going to cut that out. Any kind of threads like that that I see, I try to just cut out. Okay, and then we're going to chain piece these. And just 1/4 inch seam. Cut these apart, and we will iron them and then add them and then chop up that quilt. Now when we go back, when I pick, well, this clapper, okay, this clapper did not need to be on top of that clapper. It just happened to be, but it's not going to hurt it. It's flat, so it doesn't wave anymore. It's flat. So I will put that over here. And I'm going to just press these all to one side and then press open. And these pieces on the outside right here, they're bias. So I try to be really careful ironing. Like this is bias. This is all kind of bias. I think these two are the bias, and then this one's not. So this will be the stretchier piece. And then you can comment and let me know where you're gonna go for vacation. And y'all can even guess and see if y'all can guess where I'm at. So press this open. Just keep it nice and flat. Don't rock it. And anytime you're ever working with anything biased, I would always recommend pinning. Always, because it's going to shift more than not. So I'm gonna definitely pin this next step. And I try to do about 5 seconds on my iron and just let it sit. And of course, let's see, these two are done, so as long as they're still hot, you can put a clapper on top and it'll make it flatter. So just not rocking the iron, especially when you got bias, because if you have bias and you rock your iron like that, it's gonna make it start waving. You could also comment and tell me what collection you used for your sew along. And of course, when we do Sewcialites 2, you could always mix blocks from Sewcialites 1 with Sewcialites 2. You can have fun doing that. So from here, now this is going to be extra. I'm going to trim this up because there's all these threads here and it'll drive me crazy. That's totally not necessary. It's just something that I'm going to do. Just because I don't want all these extra threads in my quilt. And we're going to be trimming the block down, so if you trim a tiny bit off, nobody's going to know. So from here, the way we're going to build the block is this is going to go here, and this is going to go here. Then we're going to press. And then come back and add these and trim down. So I'm going to set these aside, and this does not matter. You don't need to worry about lining any of the sides up. You just need these seams to match. So I'm going to first start right there and make sure. Okay, so right here I have a duck pleat. 1, 2, watch. See that? That's not flat enough. So I'm going to re-flatten this, or I'm going to have a crease. So I'm just going to run the iron over it one more time. So I'm going to put that right there. I've got the seams lined up there, and I'm going to line the seams up here. And I'm going to just stitch. You don't have to stitch all the way out here, just over the 9 patch. And it lines up. So you can see when I stitched, I started a little bit before and a little bit after. And then I'm gonna just kind of move this out of the way and add this one. And just do the same thing, just line up. Again, this seems a little bit like it's not flat enough, so I'm gonna press it a little bit more. And then pin. And again, you don't need to worry about this extra part. It's gonna come off. And we'll sew this, iron it, and add the last two. And it lines up. Yay, it lined up. Okay, so we're gonna iron this. I was a little bit concerned. So if you were doing this and you didn't press open, you would have so much bulk right here. Because see, you flattened your bulk. You've gone left, right, left, right. If not, you would have like a big bulk space and then big bulk. So sometimes you have to press open just to have less bulk. I'm gonna press open. Now see this little piece, it kind of went over here. I'm not gonna fix that. That's not a big deal. But there is a lot of seams in this. And it's not so bad when you're doing the 9-inch size. So we go here. And I'm going to let the iron sit there just a little bit. The more seams, the flatter you want it to be. And if you pull the iron off and these are not flat, just keep the iron on it a little bit more. From here, I'm going to line up my ruler right here. And you're going to trim this straight. So that's just a little bit extra waste. It's no big deal. And we're just going to add the top and bottom. And when you do the top and bottom, because we've cut it bigger, you're going to have extra out here, which is what you want. So from here, same thing, line up these seams in the center, which can be a little bit tedious because these are pretty small. And let's put, I'll put one over here, and then we will just start and stop, and just a little bit before where the fabric is. And it lines up, so that's nice. Because this is very bulky with all these seams, sometimes things don't line up as easily because you have so much bulk. So it's really nice, really, really nice that this is lining up. And we haven't had to use Mr. Seam Ripper today. I sew with the 1.75 stitch length, and it's hard to pull the stitches out. And if you're ever sewing where you press open and when you start pressing, if your seams start coming apart right here, just move your stitch length a little bit lower. And I try to pull the pins out right before I roll over them. I try not to sew over them. So from here, I am going to set my seam, press to one side, same thing like I always do, and then we will trim, and then I'm going to show you some trimming to do on the back that will have less bulk in your overall quilt. So let's see. I try to finger press so I don't burn myself. I am using steam. And then I'll do the other side. And just let it sit. Now, I would definitely use the clapper on this and let it sit about 5 minutes. So from here, this block is supposed to finish at 3.5 inches. But, oh my gosh, that's a hot mess, right? Like, you can't sew that into a quilt. So here we go, we made it bigger. And it's okay that all this is uneven. It's supposed, like this is supposed to be even like that, but it's not, and it's okay because we're gonna trim it. So anytime you trim a block, it's great to have the same size ruler as your block so you can trim. So I have the Creative Grids 3.5 inch ruler. This is the center, and this is the center. And all of the Creative Grids rulers have a white line in the center. So I'm going to put that white line here, here, and through these points. So you've got that white line going through the 9 patch points and this way. And I'm going to trim. And I'm just going to move my mat and trim. And I'm going to fix this side. And there you go. You have a perfectly square block. It is Sewcialites block 34. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be back live next week. So I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.